Yo, how's it going, everybody? Dotadoya here, back with a brand new Dragon Ball FighterZ ranked match video. I'm sorry. Anyway, I've been watching My Hero because my friend finally got me into it, and I've seen it all. I've seen the whole show. I watched the first movie. Have not seen Heroes Rising yet. I want to though because Two Heroes was kind of bomb, and it made me a fan of My Hero. I'm not gonna lie to you, because of the structure of the show, of course, we have like Class 1A. The whole point of what I'm trying to say is the main characters of the show are Class 1A plus a couple pro heroes. Now, in Class 1A at UA High School, we have a wide variety of quirks. No two characters have abilities that are too similar to each other. Now, considering that there's 20 people in this class, that means 20 unique quirks, right? So, some of them are naturally going to be better than others. So I figured, what better way to spend my Sunday than to sit up here and rank the quirks from My Hero Class 1A from worst to best, 20 to 1. I can already tell you that number 1 isn't what you think it's going to be. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I want to preface though, I'm going to be ranking the quirks based on what they are and how. Don't worry about this microphone, it's not on. But based on how it's used and the potential that it has based on the rules and limitations and all that stuff surrounding it, the quirk itself, how we see it used, and how it could be used. Is that fair? So at number 20 we have Tail. OG Rose is a cool character, but it's just a big arm-looking buff-ass tail. You can't use it for much. If he weren't a martial arts expert, his quirk would be worthless because he can use it as an extension of himself, use it for attacks and all that sort of thing. He can kind of use it to like dodge out of danger. If he has something he can use a tail to grab onto to pull himself out of the way, but like when it comes down to it, having a tail just isn't all that cool. And I don't know why every time I sit down to record, the X Games start outside my house. It's just really annoying at this point because it's been happening for years. Point is, Tail is pretty bad. After that, at number 19, we have Naval Laser, because A, Aoyama can't really control it very well. B, he can't use it for very long without hurting himself. And apparently, if he uses it too much, he gets diarrhea or something like that. I'm not exactly sure about that. And C, it's a weak laser. Like, you can say, oh, it destroyed the robots in the entrance exam. And that's true, but those are weak robots. Like, Ida was crushing them by like slightly kicking them while he was still running. Like these robots are pretty much made of plastic, right? Like, anyway, Naval Laser isn't very good. I mean, he can use it to like move. He can use it for evasive purposes, which is cool. But at the same time, without his costume, it's just not. It's not a very viable, good quirk to use. It has low damage output. He has to try really hard to make it pierce that like bit of cement in the arc where they were developing their super attacks. But Naval Laser just isn't a very viable quirk. Number 18, I'm gonna go ahead and rock Anna Voice. Koji Koda's a cool character, I guess. Not that he has ever really done anything all that cool, but inherently the ability to telepathically control animals is cool. But you have to think about, like, what animals you can actually use for any real purposes. Like, unless there's a forest fire, and you can use bears and deer or whatever to, like, help save people, it's not a very good ability because you have to have animals with you. And the only animals you can take with you are bugs and, like, small pets. Maybe you can just walk around with a big-ass moose, but I just don't see I don't see the purpose. And if you're going to be walking around with bugs, not everybody's scared of bugs. Not everybody's as much of a wimp as Present Mike. So, like, you see the bugs and you're just like, oh, bugs. Okay. Like, it's not good. Like, it's really just not good. Like, yeah, you can use birds and stuff like that, but it's just like, considering that he lives in Japan in, like, a highly urban area, unless he can use Anna Voice on people who have animal quirks, which I hadn't thought about until just now, it's not very viable. And that's just how it is. Next is DUPLO Arms. oh, I can split my arms into multiple appendages that can have like a mouth or an eye or an ear at the end of it. I mean, I feel like I don't have to explain why DUPLO Arms isn't very good. It's better than these other three that are below it, but it's still garbage. It's a horrible quirk, and it's absolutely worthless in most situations. He can't even use the membrane between his arms to fly, like wings. Sasuke could do that. Number 16, Pop Off. I mean, the most useful we've ever seen it be is in the final exam against Midnight, because he was able to trap her by her whip on balls, but it's just sticky balls, and he doesn't stick to them, which is helpful. But it's like and also if he uses too many balls, Mineta, of course, if he uses too many of them, his head starts to bleed, and I imagine that if you bleed too much from your entire scalp, you'll eventually start to like lose consciousness and be a liability in battle. So I could pop sticky balls off of my head, but not too much, because then I'll bleed all over the place. And he's a small boy, so I don't think he has that much blood in his body as it is. So I don't know. I mean, it's fine, I guess. It's just not good. Number 15, tape. It's tape that comes out of Sero's elbows. It's useful for traversal, and it can also be useful for rescue. And you can like set traps, which is 3 more uses than most of these other quirks have. The ones that came before, at least. It's not very useful in battle, I wouldn't say, unless you're fighting like more than one enemy, and you can use the tape to divide them up. Because it seems to be really strong tape. Like, it doesn't seem to be easily terrible, I guess, because of like the provisional hero license training thing, that exam arc. When he used the tape on all those people from the other school, they couldn't break out. So it was pretty decent, I guess. Like, it's really not bad. It's a pretty decent quirk. But there's a lot of other quirks that are way better. So number 14, Frog. Having the abilities of a frog is pretty useful. I mean, you can't freeze to death. You've got some serious agility. You can spit out your stomach and store things in it, which is interesting. You can stick to things. You're kind of... If Sero and Froppy fused together, they'd just be Spider-Man. But beyond that, it can be very helpful, because then you can swim underwater. Breathe underwater is what I meant to say. Of course you can swim. You usually swim underwater. She's very versatile because frogs, despite what you may or may not think about them, are pretty versatile. So, yeah. Number 13, Sugar Rush. I mean, it's basically just super strength, but like, you eat a bunch of sugar and then you get strong, but the more sugar that you have, the stronger you get. However, the drawback to that is you'll have a really bad sugar crash after that. So that's cool. Like, if he was to fight, like, I don't know, All For One, and he just knocked back 45 pixie sticks, I mean, he'd be really useful in that fight for 10 seconds. And then after that, I mean, he just becomes a liability, and that's the only reason that I think this quirk isn't in the top 10, because super strength is very useful in a lot of situations, but with a drawback like that, it just can kind of get in the way, I feel like. Number 12, Earphone Jack. I would have loved to be able to put this quirk in the top 10 because I love Jiro so much, but I have to be honest with you, the quirk isn't that great. It is good for recon and scouting, and it has some decent offensive capabilities, you know, because she can amplify her sound and she can jack into people and mess their like hearing up, which can knock them off balance, set them up for like a combo move from somebody else. She's really good support. She would be a great rescue type hero. But Earphone Jack as a quirk is not good in a one-on-one situation, I don't think. Like, and because her hearing is so good, any like sounds that are like infrasonic or ultrasonic or like above a certain decibel level will just take her out of the fight. So say she's fighting another screamer type like President Mike or somebody like Shriek out of the Marvel comics or Banshee. They start using their power and she's out of the fight. She wouldn't be able to like function beyond all the noise she's hearing. So that is a major drawback. Like a fucking hurricane siren would knock her out. And I hate to put it that way, but I mean, that's just what we see in the show. Don't hate me, please. Number 11, invisibility. This is it's not better than earphone jack, but it's tied with it in my opinion, because invisibility is a really good ability, but I don't think Hagakure can turn it off, which, if she's not wearing like something really ostentatious, which would give away her position to the enemy, then her allies might not even know that she's there, and probably wouldn't be able to communicate with her based on the information that she's like trying to get while she's invisible, because she has to be ass naked 24/7. For some reason, I don't think they can develop a costume for her that can also be invisible. Not that it would make any difference, you still wouldn't be able to see her. There's not even an outline on her, which makes it hard for me to even know that she's in the scene in the manga or in the anime sometimes, because I'm just not looking out for a pair of floating gloves, I'm sorry. Sometimes in the anime I hear a voice and I'm like, who the hell was that? But like, invisibility on its own is a great ability to have. Invisible Girl is one of my top 20 Marvel characters because she's cool. But that's just like not the way it is on the show. It's not very useful. But here we go with the top 10. Now, believe it or not, the top 10 was actually extremely difficult to put in order, because like a lot of these quirks are very, very good. Like, but I had to put them in some sort of order. So starting with number 10, we have Dark Shadow. Dark Shadow would have been higher up in the top 10 tier. However, it's weaker during the day, which is, according to what we see, when a lot of crime takes place. That's not to say that there's not a good amount of stuff taking place at night, especially with the League of Villains doing their bullshit. But not being as powerful during the day is a drawback. It's not completely weak, but it definitely, is hindered by that. However, it's a stand, basically. But it's a stand that has autonomy. So he can have Dark Shadow, like, do something. Like, he can have Dark Shadow leave his body and do something and then come back. Like, that's pretty freaking cool if you ask me. Also, Dark Shadow can talk, which is cool because I guess Dark Shadow has a mind of its own. So they can actually, like, communicate. Like, Dark Shadow can go do recon, come back to Tokoyami, and then they can just talk about what they know and come up with a plan that way. They don't even need to have a partner because they are partners. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's really cool. And also, as you see later in the manga, he gets some pretty freaking cool abilities with Dark Shadow. So that's where I'm going to put Dark Shadow. It's a great quirk, but it does have one pretty big drawback. Speaking of major drawbacks, number 9, we have electrification. Electricity is such a good quirk. It's such a good power to have in most fictions. Lightning style jutsu are some of the best jutsu in Naruto. Kirin is like unparalleled in that regard. The Onyx Chidori is really good. People talk to me a lot about Killua. I don't know. Raiden is great. Electro is a really cool villain. Electricity is a great power to have. It's very powerful. It's very useful in a lot of situations. However, Kaminari's brain can't handle the voltage of his stronger attacks and turns stupid after using them. He has one chance to take out the enemy, and if it fails, he's out of the fight. Now, I know what you're thinking. That alone should knock it out of the top 10, but it doesn't, because he is incredibly strong. Like, most people are weak to being electrocuted, right? The only case where he wouldn't come in handy is if he's fighting somebody that's just got a natural resistance to that sort of thing, or some sort of machine or something like that. But like, if somebody has a metal quirk, they're even more susceptible to it. If somebody has a water quirk, they're even more susceptible to it. Another issue, though, is that friendly fire is a thing. So it's risky to have him use his abilities at their max without putting his other teammates at risk. So that also kind of drags it out of the top 5, which is where I wanted to put it because electricity is so cool in my opinion. By the way, this is my opinion. I should have said that a long time ago, but Kaminari's quirk is cool, but it is a serious problem. Number 8 is Explosion. I honestly don't think Explosion is that great, but it does seem to be very strong. It's very helpful to Bakugo that he can, like, manually produce the sweat that he uses to explode, rather than, like, just having to sweat naturally. But I feel like what makes Explosion good is the way that we see Bakugo use it. He uses it for maneuverability. He uses it like to get distance between him and his enemies. He uses it for very strong bursts. He can use it to like completely obliterate things in between him and his enemy, like the armor piercing shot that we only saw him do in training. I would love to see that again. But he can also use hardening. He can also use explosion to get the better of his opponent, because it's like, oh, okay, he's gonna go this way, and then it's like, yeet, explode my hand, and now I'm going this way. It's like, I don't honestly think explosion is that good, but the way Bakugo uses it, it seems like a much more viable quirk than it probably is. Number 7 is hardening, because it makes Kirishima immune to most things. There you go. Number 6, acid, because acid is also useful in most situations, but not only can she, Ashido, not only can she destroy just about anything that she would need to, but she can also use the acid to maneuver and to traverse things, which is very helpful, because if she's with a teammate in a fight, she just, and then acid, you know, like it's really useful for a lot of things. I mean, it also kind of makes her untouchable, because if I'm pretty sure she can cover her skin with the acid. And then what do you do to her? Touch her, and there goes your hand. You're done. You lost the fight. Acid's pretty cool. All right, here we are at the top 5. You know what they are. You just don't know what order they're in. So let's get started with Engine. I think Engine is a great quirk. Super speed in general is really good to have. But not only does he have super speed, but he can also use the engines in his legs to generate force for like a really strong kick. Now he can turn it up and do reciprocal burst, but his engines will stall. And that's a pretty cool drawback, but it's not very good in most situations. However, he hasn't had to use reciprocal burst that much. Although, slight spoilers from the manga, we know that his family, because of the way that the quirk works, you can remove the exhaust pipes, and they will grow back at higher efficiency. It's a very painful process. I wouldn't recommend it. But he does that, and now he can move even faster. He can use a reciprocal burst for even longer. His engines don't stall for nearly as long. He's just much better now. He's also really good for not only just like for fighting because of how strong his legs are, but for rescue. Like, say a building is coming down, then the people inside need to get to safety. You can just get in and out over and over again, get every single person out 1 by 1, 2 by 2, 3 by 3, as many as it needs to be to get everyone to safety. He would be very efficient for that. That's why I think Engine is such a good quirk. Number 4 is Zero Gravity. Because of the fact that Ochako initially couldn't use the quirk on herself without feeling sick, it's not the most useful quirk in the world. But just the fact that if you have a melee type enemy or villain or whatever, if she's able to touch them first, then they're pretty much out of the fight. Like they're just gone. And then she has to manually release, and that's also a good thing because it doesn't run on some sort of timer. Although, not only does she have that at her disposal, but like we've seen against Bakugo, she can use the entire environment against her opponent. Like, she can just touch random things in the environment, get them all above her opponent, release them, and now a fucking semi-truck just fell on All For One, and he's dead now. That's it. All For One is all for done. Anyway, moving on. Number 3, believe it or not, is One For All. I think that the quirk is good in theory, but again, spoilers for the manga, we see that Deku can access abilities that were native to One For All users that came before him, but it's a whole new level of control that he would have to have. He already can't use One For All the way that All Might did, and I don't understand why All Might could use One For All immediately at 100%. Gran Torino says that he had the body going for him, but when you see that flashback, no, he didn't. He was just about as skinny as Deku was. And because of that, I don't understand what the variable on that is. The fact that that is a variable in general makes the quirk not that good, because if you get One For All passed down to you, you do all this training. Deku trained for 10 months and was only able to use One For All at 1% initially. It's just, What was the point of all that training? You do all this training, you get the quirk, and then you blow up. Like, you blow up. Anyway. And, like, there's so many people that he's used One for All against at 5%, 8%, 20% that have just been able to tank it. Like, the quirk won't be that good for him to use until he gets to the point where he can use it at 100% consistently. And then there's the whole thing of, like, oh, previous One for All users' consciousnesses can just, like, hijack his mind. They can mess him up, get him out of concentration on the fight he's in or whatever, as we've seen in the manga. Sorry about all these manga spoilers, but it's just, the quirk has so many variables, and it's just not good. Or at least it's not as good as people would like to give it credit for. It makes Deku strong as hell, yes, but he has needed, what, 4 support items just to make the damn thing work? Number 2, creation. You can make anything that's inorganic out of your skin. Now, of course, you have to have exposed skin for that to work, but even not necessarily, because we've seen Momo just pop things out of her back straight through her costume. And you do have to have an understanding of how that thing works. But, I mean, Momo's really smart. Anybody that has that quirk that is relatively smart can just study how the thing was made, and then boom, you can make all sorts of things. Like, if I want a new gaming PC, I could just go on Origin.com, select the parts I want, and then I could just print my PC out of my arm. Like, I just, like, bro, like, what? Like, obviously, like, and also, like, she can make armor for herself if she needs to. She can make weapons. She can make a fucking bomb. She can, like, there's so much she can do with this quirk. The only drawback, though, is that she uses her own, like, body fats to do it. So, of course, you will eventually run out of energy if you continue to just make things at a rapid pace and without, like, consideration as to your own body's limitations. But, I mean, it's still a really valuable and viable quirk in most situations. I can't see a single scenario where being able to just make whatever you need or want wouldn't come in handy. And at number 1, you already know what it is by process of elimination. Half cold, half hot. Not only is the ability to manipulate fire and ice in the same body ridiculously incredible and impressive and amazing, but he's so strong in both of these. Like, I think Endeavor has said that, like, Shoto's fire is better than his, and I just have to assume that his ice is better than his mom's. Like, he's just so good. The only thing, though, is that his body is not immune to the temperatures that he's putting out. So if he fires too hard, he'll probably burn to death. And if he ices too hard, he'll probably freeze to death. But, you know, endurance training, you can deal with that better. Like, that was a large part of the purpose of the training at the training camp, I guess. It's just a very useful quirk that, as far as, like, being a battle type hero, this quirk is second to none. Like, he beat Deku. And sure, and Deku was at a point where he wasn't even, like, controlling how much of One for All he was using. I think he was still using 100% whenever he was, like, flicking his fingers and, like, using shockwaves to try to battle Todoroki. Todoroki's mastery of fire, which he had chosen not to use because he hates his dad so much. He was not using his left side. Maybe he used to way back in the day, and he's rusty with it at this point in the show, but he is not using his left side in battle very regularly, and he still pulls it out and smacks Deku. Like, it's like, it wasn't even really close, but he did lose to Bakugo because he threw the fight. But yeah, I mean, like, the show has shown us that Shoto's better than Deku. And the fight against Hero Killer Stain, Todoroki was way more useful than Deku was. I'm sorry, but Half Cold, Half Hot is just a really good quirk, and I think it's the best in the entire class. Do not at me. But yeah, that's it. I mean, the quirks have been ranked. You probably aren't watching anymore because I didn't put your favorite quirk where you wanted it to be. But yeah, I mean, your list is probably different than mine, so I would love it if you would take the time to put together your own ranking of all these quirks and tell me in the comments. You don't even have to explain why. I'll probably understand why. I mean, I did have to think very rationally and objectively about each of these quirks when I was putting them into the order that I put them into, so I can probably get why you have the quirks where you have them. But yeah, that's actually all I got for you this time. This has been an extremely long video. I knew it would be. I got to talk about 20 characters, but you know, These My Hero videos always end up running really long anyway. Anyway, I'll see you. Go Beyond Plus Ultra.